in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. I have always been a perfectionist in everything I do. My husband returned from his military expedition, bringing with him a woman. Upon seeing me, she immediately knelt down. I am willing to marry the Marquise, even if only as a concubine. I am content. At that time, I said nothing, but I tossed and turned for half the night. Finally, unable to endure it, I knocked on her door. The thing is, my husband is not the Marquis yet. Although you might not mind, the Marquis of this household is my father-in-law. He is a widower, while my husband is merely a base-born son born of a concubine. Her previously dull eyes suddenly lit up. Widower. Since childhood, I have never been one to win people's hearts. When I was 5, my grandmother held me in her arms and said, "Your father works hard outside every day, while your mother stays at home in leisure. Your father is good, and your mother is bad, right?" I thought for a while and then replied, "That is not correct. Mother takes care of me and father, and she also has to manage the household. In this house, the idle one is grandmother, so the bad person is you." Grandmother was so angry that she moved to Uncle Qiao's house that very night. When Uncle Qiao was 50, he teased me. "Bella, do you want a younger brother? Your mother cannot give birth anymore. Why don't you advise your father to take a concubine to birth more males for our family?" I stared at him. Does taking a concubine guarantee a younger brother? But I heard grandmother say that your 2 concubines gave birth to 3 daughters in a row, all of whom are useless things. Uncle Qiao's 2 concubines immediately cried loudly, screaming and threatening to die, causing the house to be in utter chaos. My parents understood my temperament well, and worried that I would suffer after marrying into the Marquis's manor, so they prepared a dowry for me so abundant that it made everyone stare in wide-eyed astonishment. It was simply because my family was the wealthiest silk merchant in the region. We had nothing but money. However, the very day after the wedding, Lady Wei, my mother-in-law, took steps to discipline me. Sure enough, a merchant's daughter lacks proper upbringing. Newly married, yet she sleeps until the sun is high. This is improper. Her face was stern, majestic even without anger, and the eyes of the 2 sisters-in-law standing beside her were full of mockery. Alana, my eldest sister-in-law, held a handkerchief and sighed softly. Perhaps she relies on her procession of dowry stretching for miles, intending to come here and stir up trouble. If the Marquis's manor hadn't been in financial difficulty at the time, how could a merchant woman have been allowed to enter? Every time I think about this, I am so ashamed that I lose sleep all night. I did not reply, but silently crept into Elena's room in the middle of the night and pried her eyelids open. "Didn't you say you couldn't sleep?" It is funny to mention, but for a Grand Marquis's manor, the number of maids and older servants is not even equal to my family's. I slept until the sun was high simply because no one came to wake me. However, my parents instructed me carefully that in a noble house with cumbersome rules, I must be cautious in my speech, reserved in my behavior, speak little and observe much. I have never been the type to explain myself. The person who wrongs you always knows better than anyone that they are wronging you, so explaining only leads to being led by the nose. I value the truth, and those who want to play word games with me have no chance. Elena unexpectedly did not seek trouble with me anymore. That night's incident caused her to develop a nervous condition, and she had to be treated for 3 months before she dared to close her eyes to sleep at night again. Hearing of the incident, Lady Wei also did not dare to provoke me. The other day, she accidentally bumped into me in the corridor. That noblewoman, who always emphasized rules, hurriedly turned aside to avoid me like lightning. From then on, my life became quite peaceful. That was until I received a letter from William Wei, informing me that he wanted to bring back a woman who had once saved his life. The smiles that had long vanished from the faces of Lady Wei and my 2 sisters-in-law now returned. William went to the front lines right after the wedding ceremony, placing national affairs first. You know the principles and have no complaints. Now that he wants to bring his savior home, you naturally must receive her with propriety. Do not let personal feelings lead to petty behavior, lest outsiders gossip. My 2 sisters-in-law cover their mouths with their sleeves, looking as if they were about to watch a good show. I have known for a long time that William was dissatisfied with this marriage. He is arrogant and ambitious, believing that marrying for a dowry is an insult to his character and a sacrifice of his unbloomed love. He was forced to nod by his parents, but he took his anger out on me. On our wedding night, he did not even lift my veil and immediately set off for the battlefield. I did not say a word, only respectfully listening to my mother-in-law's teachings. Regarding romantic feelings, a merchant does not wake up early unless there is a profit involved. I spent money to climb high. Why would I care about something as worthless as that? Unfortunately, Lady Y received her retribution before she could see the day I suffered. It happened while we were talking. She suddenly turned to boast about herself. Bella, you should also think more openly. It is common for men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Your father refused to take a concubine even to the death. I had to persuade the Marquis for a long time before he agreed to accept a chambermaid. That is a rare thing. Alina immediately chimed in. Everyone knows the old Marquis and mother have a deep affection. If it weren't for the issue of heirs, he probably wouldn't have even glanced at concubine Yang. I was shocked to hear this. Lady Wei had no children, and the old Marquis's 3 sons were all born to concubine Yang. This meant the old Marquis didn't bother to glance at concubine Yang, yet still managed to have 3 sons with her. It seems that what they call enduring humiliation is a long-standing tradition of the men in the Marquis's manor. I could not help but speak up to correct them. Don't you know that the Lord has been keeping courtesans at the Red Drunkard Pavilion for many years? He used to keep them at the Emerald Cloud Pavilion and the Immortal Beauty Court, but later, due to tight finances, he switched to the Red Drunkard Pavilion. Oh, mother should also think more openly. What did you just say? That it is common for men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Before I finished my sentence, Lady Wei's face had turned pale. The surrounding maids each had a different expression. Some gasped, while others smirked as if they already knew. The 2 sisters-in-law, whose eyes were wide with excitement at the gossip a moment ago, immediately darkened their faces when they heard the words. Tight finances. The Marquis's manor had been in deficit for many years, while my family specialized in supplying precious silk to officials and nobles. They could only look enviously at others dressing beautifully. Now, knowing into whose hands their frugal savings had fallen, who could bear it? Lady Wei maintained her demeanor as the mistress of the house and ordered an immediate investigation. Upon investigation, she was horrified to discover that it was not only true, but the annual cost of keeping courtesans in those places was nearly equal to the entire household's expenses. The title, Place of Wind and Dust, Golden Tower for Spending Money, was not given in vain. Those courtesans were all regular customers of my family's silk workshop, and had brought quite a few debauched stories. Lady Wei's health was already weak, and she fainted on the spot this time. The people she sent to the Red Drunkard Pavilion caused a disturbance, causing Lord Wei to lose all face. When he returned to the manor, he scolded her harshly. She became bedridden and could not get up. Before William even returned home, she passed away. The management rights fell into Alina's hands, and she almost laughed out loud during the mourning period. The Marquis's sons were not raised by Lady Wei, and their birth mother, concubine Yang, had also been tormented to death by Lady Wei, so they only wailed a few times for the sake of formality. Regardless, the funeral still had to be conducted properly. Therefore, when William returned leading a woman to the manor gate, I was truly confused. No one had informed William that his legitimate mother had died. The white drapes had just been removed from the manor, and the old Marquis and the elder brothers did not bother to come out to welcome an invisible person like him. William froze when he saw me. The servant beside him reminded him that I was the bride he had never met. William looked slightly unnatural. The woman was much sharper. She immediately let go of his hand and gently bowed to me. Sister, I have come to join this family. I am willing to marry the Marquis, and I will not complain even if I only become a concubine. My expression changed immediately. Impossible. What is impossible? William loudly interrupted, pulling the woman up as a show of authority. Tina Chun saved my life. Letting her be a concubine is already unfair to her. His eyes swept over me with meaning. Then he took the beauty and left straight away. I stood frozen in place. The maids and servants watching sighed or shook their heads. Everyone was pitying the future of the legal wife, me, but I was wondering, that woman said she wanted to marry the Marquis, so ultimately, was she interested in my husband or my father-in-law? Lord Wei, after hearing about the disturbance caused by William at the gate, only gave a symbolic punishment, making him kneel for one night in the ancestral hall for show. I tossed and turned, becoming more and more restless. No, I had to go find that woman and make things clear, otherwise, I would not sleep tonight. She still did not know that William would not come tonight. She opened the door without asking who was outside. Upon seeing me, the smile in her eyes vanished instantly. Did you come to lecture me, sister? Where is William? Where is he? The woman crossed her arms, her eyes full of defensiveness. I closed the door, sat down at the table, and poured 2 cups of hot tea. You are Tina, correct? Sit down. Tina still looked at me warily, not moving forward, standing still at a distance. You are from Yang County, and you saved William when he was seriously injured and unconscious by the riverbank, right? She hesitated slightly. Did William tell you that? I had no patience to wait for him to tell me. Immediately after receiving the letter, I had people investigate. The Chiao family's shops are spread across all prefectures. Checking a person with a clear name is not difficult. Tina is the daughter of a normal farming family. When she discovered William, she initially stood and observed. It was only when she heard the injured soldiers call him Little Marquis that she decisively took him home to treat him, finding medicine and doctors, and caring for him carefully. William is the 3rd son of the Marquis of Vnhn, and the heir to the Marquis title has not yet been decided. It is not strange for soldiers to flatter him by calling him Little Marquis, but I had to clarify this with Tina. Even though she might not care, this place is indeed a Marquis's manor. But the Marquis is my father-in-law, a widower, while William is only a base-born son, and the position of Marquis may not reach him. However, he currently holds an official position, a minor captain of the 7th rank. Tina's dull eyes suddenly lit up. A widower. I nodded. Correct. This is also the second thing I want to tell you. My mother-in-law has just passed away. My husband must observe mourning for a full year. During that time, he cannot take a concubine, and the 2 of you cannot share a room. If reported, the emperor, who values filial piety, will surely punish him severely without mercy. Tina's voice suddenly rose high. 1 year? Men have always craved the new and tired of the old. Will he still remember me in a year? I raised my eyebrows, observing her seriously. This woman is interesting. Realizing she had lost her composure, she quickly adjusted her expression and asked tremblingly, how old is the old Marquis this year? 45. As soon as I entered the manor, my mother-in-law made me organize a birthday banquet for the old Marquis, so I remember it very clearly. Tina's hand on the table gradually tightened, seeming to have made a decision. William is being punished by kneeling in the ancestral hall tonight. Miss Tina need not wait anymore. When walking out of the room, I did not forget to leave a reminder. Also, do not take the liberty to go find him. The ancestral hall is right behind the old Marquis's bedroom. If you are caught by him, I cannot protect you. I was not threatening her. Lord Wei had been blacklisted by all the brothels simultaneously, and the furniture smashed by Lady Wei's people had been billed to the manor. He was currently holding back a belly full of anger with nowhere to vent. Tina smiled obediently. Rest assured, sister, I will not go to the ancestral hall. As soon as the sky turned bright, William stormed into my room in a rage. Where is Tina? Did you chase her away? I had just finished washing my face, had not yet applied makeup, and was wearing only a layer of inner garments. After shouting, he suddenly realized, and his eyes swept over the thin white fabric as if burned, hurriedly looking away. I was also frightened by him and hurriedly put on an outer robe. What are you saying? Didn't she rest in the guest room last night? William closed his eyes for a moment, his face gradually becoming cold. I have already looked. The bedding in the guest room has not been opened. She clearly did not sleep there. The maids said they saw you enter her room last night. You surely said something that made Tina angry and leave. He paused, looking at me with utter disappointment. I originally intended that if you could treat Tina well, I would treat you with respect like a guest. I did not expect you to be so vicious. Tina is a weak woman who has never left her hometown. If she is truly chased out of the manor, how can she survive out there? I was made tense by his words, and immediately called the guards from the front gate, back gate, and side doors to question them. Alina was the first to arrive. She was worried about not having an opportunity to establish her authority, so this time she tried her best to show off. Whatever the housekeeper says does not exist, truly does not exist. Last night, no one actually left the manor. The gatekeepers had each been slapped a few times, causing them to almost grind their teeth. The maids and older women also quickly reported back that Tina was nowhere to be seen in the manor. Alina could not sit still on the grand chair, her face turned from astonishment to panic. Bella Chiao, did you harm Tina and hide her body somewhere? William frowned. Sister-in-law Alina, she wouldn't go to that extent. I immediately stood up. According to the laws of our dynasty, falsely accusing someone of murder results in a beating with a heavy stick for a light offense, or imprisonment for a heavy offense. Sister-in-law Alina, follow me to see the magistrate. Alana gaped, staring at me in a daze, as if remembering the fear of having her eyelids pried open by me in the middle of the night. A long time later, the corners of her mouth distorted. Look, getting hot, tempered again. I was just making a random guess. We are all one family, why mention the magistrate and the court? But a living person disappearing in the manor is not a small matter. Search every room for me. Anyone who does not cooperate is opposing me. Facing the servants, Elena regained her demeanor and gave orders with great momentum. Everyone, afraid of being slapped again, rushed out simultaneously, with the determination to dig 3 feet into the ground to find her. This time the speed was very fast, only the time it takes to burn a stick of incense had passed when someone shouted, "Found her." Elena breathed a sigh of relief. The effort just now was not in vain, otherwise it would have been a huge loss of face. William walked quickly towards that direction, stumbling a bit since he had knelt all night in the ancestral hall. I followed leisurely, already having a very specific premonition in my heart. Sure enough, outside the old Marquise's bedroom, a crowd had gathered, everyone craning their necks to look inside. The person who discovered this was the gatekeeper in the corner of the courtyard, the one who had been slapped the most earlier. His eyes were red with anger, and ignoring the rules, he stormed straight into the room. When he pushed the door open, Miss Tina's mandarin duck bodice was still snagged on the old Marquis's belt. Oh heavens, how can there be such a depraved matter? Nora stomped her foot and sighed. Lord Wei was even more surprised than the people watching the commotion. He thought Tina was a maid who had voluntarily offered herself, so he accepted without hesitation. The most devastated person was, naturally, William. He walked unsteadily, as if bidding farewell to his own budding romance. Tina's matter was temporarily put aside. Initially, if not for the disturbance caused by William and Elena, Lord Wei would have gone with the flow and accepted Tina. William, no matter how angry, would have had to swallow his blood. Who would have expected that now, with over 100 people in the manor, everyone was whispering that the little Marquise had been forced to be cuckolded by the old Marquise. More seriously, the mourning period for my mother-in-law was not yet over. Tina now turned into a hot potato. The father and son kept pushing her back and forth, neither willing to accept her. Alina worried so much she seemed to age 10 years in a single night. Nora cracked melon seeds while telling jokes to me. I let it go in one ear and out the other, not caring in the least. Last year, the new emperor ascended the throne and intended to have the imperial household department select 9 merchant houses from the common folk to specially supply the royal family, granting the title of royal merchant. If selected, it would be no different from being granted a golden plaque with big letters. In the future, there would be opportunities to manage salt, iron, and wine. These industries, monopolized by the court, would allow one to become a regional general merchant, and even receive an official title. Since ancient times, merchants have been considered a low class, men could not enter the path of officialdom, and women were looked down upon in marriage. This news was like opening a path to the clouds for the merchant class. So, the merchants tried their best to use tricks, each with their own style. My father also gave his all, even lurking in brothels and gambling dens to meet noble figures. It was there that he met Lord Wei. One lacked money, the other lacked fame. With good wine in their bellies, they shook hands and cooperated. Elena was right, I had indeed squeezed through a crack. Otherwise, with the status of a prominent family like the Marquis of Vian's manor, which is also distantly related to the emperor, even if my father brought several estates as dowry, they would never have married a merchant's daughter as the legal wife. But my parents still felt I was suffering a loss. Bella, have you really decided? If you regret it, father still has time to go find Lord Wei to talk. My father kept clinging to me as I stepped onto the bridal sedan chair, babbling endlessly. Reluctant to let go, I smiled brightly. Why should I regret such a sure-win business deal? During the time William was fighting on the battlefield, I was not idle at all. I attended banquets and tea parties hosted by noble ladies and daughters of prestigious families. Whether I received an invitation or not, I arrived bearing generous gifts. As long as I announced myself as the daughter-in-law of the Marquis of Anne's manor, no one dared to turn me away. After a few visits, silk handkerchiefs, embroidered fans, and silk flowers bearing the House of Qiao brand began to appear everywhere. When mentioning silk shops, the first name that came to the minds of the nobility in the capital was the House of Qiao. I also did not forget to inquire about important information. I clearly memorized the names, hobbies, and temperaments of the officials in charge of selecting the royal merchant so that my parents could prepare thoroughly. Currently, the embroidery products of the House of Qiao had passed the preliminary round, but they still had to pass the secondary and final selections. I had no mind to manage that drama of father and son fighting for love, but eventually, the matter still fell upon me. Lord Wei told Elena to find a house outside and temporarily move Tina out of the manor to prevent rumors from spreading excessively. Elena did not want to touch the manor's already tight budget. She rolled her eyes and immediately came up with a plan. This incompetent daughter-in-law has already exhausted her energy managing the household affairs. I fear I cannot take good care of Miss Tina. Why not let younger sister Bella handle it? Doesn't her dowry include several houses? Lord Wei revealed a look of awkwardness when he looked at me, forcing me to use my own dowry to support a woman whose relationship to either my husband or my father-in-law was unclear was indeed a highly damaging move. I pretended not to understand the hidden meaning and nodded decisively. Since sister-in-law is incompetent, I will do it instead. The keys, ledgers, storehouse, main kitchen, all entrances, and the complete roster of people in the manor, please prepare them all before sunset and hand them over to me. Elena hurriedly tried to explain. I did not mean that. I immediately cut her off. You yourself said you were exhausted by the trivial matters in the manor, so how can the Marquise rest assured in entrusting the management rights to you anymore? Lord Wei already held a prejudice against Elena because of the Tina incident, and the people in the manor had long been complaining endlessly. He just hadn't had an excuse to replace her. Now that she had revealed her weakness herself, and I actively asked to take over, Lord Wei made a decision immediately. Eldest daughter-in-law, I acknowledge your hard work, but the Marquis's manor is large, and we cannot afford mistakes. Since you are currently unable to cope, let us temporarily entrust the housekeeping authority to Bella. Elena moved her lips for a long time before finally squeezing out a yes. Her face looked desolate, as if she had aged another 10 years. As soon as I received the keys and ledgers, my mood was instantly dampened as if doused with cold water. The account books in the Marquis's manor were messy enough to make one break out in a cold sweat. Today I borrow from you, tomorrow you borrow from me, otherwise, a number is missing here, or an extra line is there. I wondered how my late mother-in-law managed it before. It turned out she frequently withdrew silver from the manor to assist her relatives on her mother's side. Tina came to find me while I was furious, clicking the abacus beads until sparks flew. You want to drive me away. She blocked the doorway, looking aggressive as if ready to fight for her life. I want to see the Marquis, or seeing William is fine too. I calmly looked up. What is the use of seeing them? Does either of them have enough face to keep you here? Tina bit her lip, unable to say a word. From the moment she uttered the phrase, men have always craved the new and tired of the old. I knew she was uneducated and narrow-minded. She had to stumble a few times to understand her position. The external residence lacks neither food nor clothing, and there are servants to wait on you. I advise you to obediently move there this very night. If you cause any more trouble and make people laugh, I fear you won't even be able to keep that place. My words were full of hidden meaning. Moving her out was Wei's way of avoiding scandal for a while. If he truly didn't want to keep her, he would have given her some silver and chased her away immediately. Why bother spending money to support another person? Tina seemed to understand something, and her pretty chin tilted up again. Humph, I will go then. There will come a day when I return in glory. I actually had a slight urge to send her to the silk shop to work. That spirit, which bounces back like a spring the more it is suppressed, would at least make her the sales goddess of the whole street. I had just comfortably turned 2 pages of the ledger when William stormed into the room in a thunderous rage. Why did you let Tina live in our house? It took me a few seconds to react to the words, or house, he had just uttered. Since that night, William had hardly returned to the manor, and when he did, he intentionally avoided the inner courtyard. I could understand, he thought it was a love sent from heaven, but who knew it would turn out to be a little stepmother. Not running away that very night showed he was already quite strong. This guy disappeared for more than half a month, and as soon as he returned, what did he mean by calling this or house? I did not bother to look up, turning another page of the ledger. I am doing this for your own good. For my good? William screamed, his voice cracking. Do you know what people are saying outside? They say I have been cuckolded and still have to support the person who cuckolded me. It is more tragic than Lu Bu of the Han Dynasty or Prince Shou of the Tang Dynasty. I put the ledger down, looking at him with full sympathy. That is indeed tragic. The corners of William's eyes were red, looking like a resentful wife full of grievances with nowhere to vent. Yet you still say it is for me. Perhaps you just want to curry favor with father. William, do you want the Marquis title? I looked straight at him. My voice was calm but firm. The anger on William's face immediately dissipated by half, his eyes trembling, his gaze wavering. I am a base-born son, not the eldest son. How can the Marquis title be my turn? I smiled. As long as you want it, then listen to me. William's friend had an uncle who was none other than Official Su, the official presiding over the secondary selection of the Royal Merchant Competition. It was not exactly a coincidence. In the circle of nobility like them, everyone has intertwined connections. You want me to take your father to visit Official Su? William's expression was extremely complex, as if I were forcing him to commit some heinous crime. I did not get angry but calmly explained the reasoning. Is there any harm to you if my family becomes the royal merchant? Moreover, the silk goods of my Qiao family are not inferior to anyone's. However, while all the merchants who passed the preliminary round are trying to find ways to ask for favors and connect to see Official Su, only my family has remained silent. What do you think Official Su will think? William pondered for a while. He will probably think your family is as noble as a chrysanthemum, unlike those dishonest merchants out there. I almost blacked out. I heard the third son of the Marquis' manor was neglected from a young age and raised freely. It turns out he really is like jade without flaws, but also white to the point of being empty. Official Shu will only fear that my family has another backer, and if chosen later, we will not be of one heart with him. I could not help but raise my voice, making William jump. If I tell you to go, just go. And please, stop reading those stories about a domineering Marquis loving a cold little girl for me. William stormed off in annoyance, but ultimately, he still followed my instructions. Thanks to Official Shu's son acting as a bridge, my father, being in a favorable position, became one of the few people allowed to enter the Shu manor to drink with Official Su. Added to the status of being in laws with the Marquis's manor and the good relationship with Official Shu, he began to associate with several other officials on the review board. People in high positions value risk reduction more than profit compared to rough market merchants. The House of Qiao clearly made them feel more assured. As a result, when the secondary selection results were announced, the House of Qiao smoothly advanced to the final round. When William returned, I was inventorying the last ledger. He returned to the manor much more frequently than before, mostly to discuss official business with my father and his two elder brothers. Occasionally, he would stop by my place, but mostly he would just say a few sentences and then leave. Tonight, however, he rarely sat quietly beside me for a long time. Ahem. The House of Qiao has entered the final round. William spoke up, obviously just finding an excuse to chat. I narrowed my eyes, struggling to cross-reference a debt that I did not know the origin of. Official Su praised you quite a bit. You haven't had dinner yet, have you? The page in my hand was pressed down by a slender hand. I looked up in annoyance to meet William's dark eyes. The candlelight flickered, reflecting a gaze that seemed to hide 10,000 unspoken words. Finally, he just sighed softly. Bella, are you still angry with me? I was stunned for a moment. You must be talking about the Tina matter. I was angry. I answered frankly. Angry that you did something that harmed others and yourself without gaining any benefit, almost gaining a reputation for unfilial piety, and cutting off your own path to the Marquis title. William stiffened for a moment and then gave a bitter smile. So, apart from gains and losses, do you have no other emotions? I thought about it and shook my head, sighing lightly. I only pity Tina. If she were a man, there would surely be hundreds or thousands of open roads waiting for her. William gently let go of my hand, and the light in his eyes also extinguished. He walked away unsteadily, as if once again bidding farewell to a fleeting emotion that had passed through his life. After finishing the calculations, I discovered that the number of servants in the Marquis's manor was actually not small, but the diligent and honest ones had all been suppressed until they had to leave. The remaining people were mostly lazy, cunning, secretly self-serving, and altogether a bunch of difficult slaves. I immediately fired 70% of the people in the manor. In an instant, the courtyard was filled with wailing maids and manservants kneeling and begging. Old woman Wang used her old age as an excuse, brazenly sitting right in front of my door. Wasn't it just forgetting to hand over the surplus silver a few times? Is it necessary to drive people away like this? When the old madam was alive, she was not as stingy as you. The grandsons and granddaughters she had secretly brought into the manor also immediately chimed in, complaining that I was too nitpicky and lacked compassion. I opened the notebook I had just compiled last night and read each item aloud clearly. In which year and which month did she take how many extra silver taels for what reason? How much jewelry and precious stones did her granddaughter break or lose? How did her grandson embezzle the incense and oil lamp money at my mother-in-law's funeral? The total is 280, 4 silver taels and 13 copper coins. Do you want to pay immediately, sign a debt contract, or kowtow to thank me for my leniency in not prosecuting you, and then immediately get out of the manor? The 3 biggest troublemakers, 1 old and 2 young, were instantly silenced as if choked by a ghost. They bowed perfunctorily twice and then hurriedly scurried away. I swept my gaze around the courtyard. You still haven't left. Do you want to hear me recount each person's faults one by one? Since old woman Wang's reputation was considered completely ruined, no one would dare to hire her as a parasite once they inquired about the reason she was expelled from the Marquis's manor. The people still kneeling in the courtyard finally came back to their senses and hurriedly kowtowed to express their gratitude, their movements becoming increasingly fluent, fearing that I would accidentally expose more crimes, making it difficult for them to find another way to make a living. I asked a broker to find new people, the honest and hard-working type, who could start work tomorrow morning so as not to affect the daily life in the manor. But Alina was like a cat smelling fish. She dragged along Nora, the one who swayed with the wind, and stormed into my room. Bella, the Marquis's manor was peaceful, yet it has been hollowed out by you like this. Her eyes were filled with tears, her voice full of misery. Do you intend to destroy this entire family? It would be better to separate the household than to live with a jinx like you. Elena had asked our mother-in-law to step in and demand a separation countless times. She was sure that the Marquis title would belong to her husband, so naturally, she wanted everything settled quickly so the other 2 brothers would get out early. I was immediately overjoyed. Separating would be great. Then I flipped through the ledgers noisily, reading aloud the amount of the Marquis' manor's losses, clearly distinguishing which parts were caused by the eldest brother, by Lord Wei, and by William and his second brother. Lady Wei and Alina both came from noble backgrounds. I believed it wasn't that they couldn't read ledgers, it was just that their eyes were full of their own schemes, and no one bothered to care about the tattered state of the Marquis' manor. Since you want to separate, I will shoulder Lord Wei's losses. As for the portions belonging to your 2 families, please take care of them yourselves. I clicked the abacus and presented 2 figures straight to the faces of Elena and Nora. Elena thumped her chest a few times, choked for a long while before hissing out, Bella, you are getting hot-tempered again. I just said that in passing. We are all one family. Why be so calculating? Nora immediately seized the opportunity, striding towards me while not forgetting to shoot an angry glance at Elena. Elena wanted to separate. I never said I wanted to. Elena's face turned bright red, both angry and panicked, glaring at me and Nora. Fine, you are colluding to trap me, aren't you? The old Marquis has no eldest son, so he is forced to appoint the eldest one available. The Marquis' title will be ours sooner or later. The ones who must leave are you people. The statement was too brazen, and the whole courtyard instantly fell into silence. A clear, soft laugh rang out in that heavy atmosphere. Humph, that is not certain at all. Tina suddenly stood tall in the courtyard of my residence, looking a bit fuller than she had a few months ago. Tonight, people were coming and going through the back door. She probably took advantage of the gatekeeper's negligence to sneak into the manor. Elena recognized her, and her eyes immediately darkened. Who allowed you to enter the manor? Is it your turn to speak here? Eldest brother has 4 concubines and usually, Elena hates them to the point of grinding her teeth. She has always believed that it is lowly women like Tina who seduce men and make them lose their minds. Tina smiled even more radiantly, intentionally sticking out her chest. Why is it not my turn to speak? I am pregnant with the Marquis's flesh and blood in his twilight years. If I give birth to a son, I fear you will even have to call me mother. Elena stumbled and had to be supported by a maid to stand firm. She pointed tremblingly at Tina's face, unable to speak properly. You are insolent. You and William had an ambiguous relationship. Who knows whose child is in your belly? Tina raised her willow leaf eyebrows, asserting firmly, William and I have long since ended our relationship. This child belongs to Lord Wei. You come to the external residence to find me every other day. How can it be wrong? The crowd of servants gathered more and more. Seeing that the situation was uncontrollable, I waved my hand to order Lord Wei to be invited, and also sent someone to call William to return to the manor immediately. A matter this big must be investigated thoroughly. Lord Wei was dragged out of his warm blanket by 4 or 5 maids and older women, arriving with a grey face. William's expression was no better. The father-son relationship that had just softened not long ago was now ice-cold again. Arriving at the same time were a famous gynecologist from the capital and midwife Li. Miss Tina has been pregnant for 2 months and 4 days. Midwife Li released Tina's wrist and nodded to me, truly living up to her reputation. She could even calculate the day of conception so accurately. Counting back the time, it was exactly the 3rd day after Tina was moved to the external residence. Lord Wei looked dejected. That night I did go. Hurry up and have everyone disperse. I decisively refused. When it comes to the bloodline of the Marquise's manor, we cannot fail to make it clear. Call the gatekeeper of the external residence here. The gatekeeper of the external residence was someone I had brought from my maiden family. He bowed to everyone, then took out a logbook and began to read aloud. On the night of the 17th, Lord Wei arrived at the hour of the dog and left at the hour of the pig. At noon on the 18th, Lord Wei arrived at the hour of the monkey and left at the hour of the rooster. At noon on the 19th, Lord Wei also arrived at the hour of the monkey and left at the hour of the rooster. The whole courtyard was silent except for Tina, who looked smug and spoke proudly. See, I told you it was the Marquis's child. The gatekeeper paused for a moment and then continued reading. On the evening of the 19th, the 3rd young master arrived for 1/4 of an hour during the hour of the dog and left after the 2nd quarter. Everyone's eyes swished towards William. Nora looked at me with pity, shaking her head and sighing. 3rd brother looks broad-shouldered, slim-waisted, and long-legged, but I didn't expect him to last only 1/4 of an hour. William cried out like a desperate groundhog. I only came to ask clearly, to ask if any of her words saying she liked me were true. He looked like a drowning man clutching at a straw, tightly gripping my hand. Madam, you must believe me. After she moved to the external residence, I have never touched her once. I tilted my head to look at the gatekeeper. He closed the logbook, clasped his hands, and said, "The 3rd young master speaks the truth. That day, he only spoke for a short while and then left. The old servant woman serving Miss Tina can testify. Afterward, only Lord Wei visited." William let out a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted, but Lord Wei's expression became even more unsightly. He bowed his head and whispered to me, "Bella, think of a way to help me. I cannot take her as a concubine. I have already decided on a person for remarriage." Lord Wei wanted to marry Lady Sylvia as his 2nd wife. Lady Sylvia was 6 years older than him, 51 this year. However, she possessed a warehouse full of wealth, and was a cousin of the Empress Dowager, and the maternal aunt of the current emperor. If one must mention a weakness, it is that she has been widowed 3 times, and has been labeled with the reputation of bringing bad luck to husbands. Lady Sylvia is a traditional woman who simply wants to remarry quickly to wash away the bad name. This marriage was actually matched by my father, Master Qiao. Unexpectedly, it became real. The day my father came to the manor to talk to Lord Wei, William and I were also present. Lady Sylvia had originally intended to rely on the Buddha's gate for the rest of her life, but the moment she saw the true face of Lord Wei, it was like a dry tree meeting spring or a drought meeting a heavy rain shower. That very day, she asked my father to propose on her behalf. Master Qiao spoke with such composure that he made Lord Wei's face turn bright red. Regarding the issue of bringing bad luck to husbands, I have examined the horoscopes of both parties. The Marquise has a fate that clashes with wives. 2 strong fates meeting will neutralize everything. People say a woman older by 3 brings gold. Lady Sylvia is 6 years older than the Marquis. Isn't that like 2 lumps of gold falling from the sky? Lord Wei smiled until his eyes squinted, almost disregarding the hierarchy to call my father, Brother Qiao. William heard this and was stunned, truly a master merchant, able to win first prize wherever he goes. My mother often said that all the sweet and pleasant words in the family were used up by father, which is why he became such a strict perfectionist. Father, however, did not think so. He always praised me and mother for being alike, cautious and serious, which gave us the strength to look after the entire family. It was just that now, as the gatekeeper, it was my turn to have a headache. It was hard enough to have a powerful Lady Sylvia set her sights on the Marquis. How could I let people know about the father and son fighting over a concubine? Hearing Lord Wei finish speaking, Tina's previous arrogance vanished into smoke. She fell to her knees with a thud, hugging his legs and crying like rain. Marquis, you cannot abandon me, I only have you left. Tina cried pitifully, but I only looked on with helplessness. A woman who places all her hope in a man will ultimately be taught a lesson by that man. Amidst the many staring eyes, Lord Wei could neither push her away nor help her up. I sighed softly and signaled the maids. The servants retreated. Tina was, after all, carrying the bloodline of the Marquis's manor. It was not appropriate to let her drift outside. Let's do this. Continue to let her stay at the external residence. Wait until the mourning period for the late Lady Wei is over. Then let William officially take her as a concubine. The child will then be considered to have a status. William cried out once again as if his throat would crack. Lord Wei gritted his teeth, his face cold as frost. No buts, let it be decided this way. The child, whether male or female, will be recorded under William's name. The two sisters-in-law looked at each other and felt there was no other way. Besides, handling it this way did not affect their interests. Everyone yawned and withdrew one after another. The only one suffering the consequences was William alone. Tina wiped her tears and coquettishly crawled to William's side. William dear. William stood frozen as if turned to stone, shook as if electrocuted, screamed, and turned to run away. In the wind, the sentence, "I no longer believe in love," could still be faintly heard. Paffed, truly foolish. Tina pursed her lips, rolled her eyes, and then settled up to me. I saw through it. In this manner, you are the one who truly holds power, sister. I am willing to follow you, even if only as a concubine. I looked at her belly and smiled slightly. Then be a useful person. I am not a man, I do not raise waste. I used my private funds to personally organize a grand wedding for Lord Wei and Lady Sylvia. When offering tea to pay respects to my new mother-in-law, I actively presented the keys to managing the manor, along with the rectified account books, the list of land properties, and the roster of the household population. Lady Sylvia had a warehouse full of wealth and was skilled in managing affairs inside and out. Just flipping through a few pages, she stopped, looked up at me, and evaluated me again. You are the eldest daughter of manager Qiao Bella. I lowered my eyes and bowed. I am, indeed, a person of ability. Lady Sylvia's expression softened. My eyes are bad, and I cannot handle these trivial matters. In the future, I will still trouble you to look after them. By the way, I heard that your Qiao family is preparing for the secondary selection for the royal merchant. I had originally intended to find another occasion to probe Lady Sylvia's attitude, but I didn't expect her to be so straightforward and open the topic first. Yes, the silk currently draped over Lady Sylvia is the exclusive fabric of the House of Qiao, intended to be presented to the officials in the secondary selection. Lady Sylvia smoothed her sleeves, her eyes sparkling with laughter. Oh, then I must go to the palace more often. The other day, the Empress Dowager praised this fabric as unique, even more beautiful than the type the Imperial Household Department is currently using. I calmly withdrew. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. Father truly has ability, turning Lord Wei from a waste product into a connector to the peak of power. The Qiao family used Lord Wei's lingering romantic reputation to connect with the final supporter. Lord Wei married a wealthy woman, and Lady Sylvia no longer bore the title of a widow. Truly a happy and harmonious family. However, there was someone determined to destroy it. Nora sent someone to find me, saying that Alina wanted to report William for taking a concubine while in mourning. At that time, I was spinning like a top outside Tina's room. She was having a premature birth. Amidst the groans of pain becoming weaker and weaker, the news from Nora made people even more wary. I hate the type of person who cannot help but only specializes in dragging others down like that. Although I understood why Alina chose this dangerous path, eldest brother had failed the imperial exams repeatedly. Thanks to Lord Wei's recommendation, he got a civil official position of the 6th rank, but the salary was negligible, and his future was bleak. If they didn't seize the Marquis title, her family would slide downhill without breaks. Lord Wei's health was deteriorating day by day, and he indeed had the intention to establish an heir soon. Regarding choosing an heir between the eldest son and William, he always hesitated. Appointing the eldest son was the ancestral system, but appointing William was his private desire. Within that private desire was guilt towards William. But mostly it was because of his bias towards the late, born flesh and blood in Tina's belly. especially after midwife Lee took the pulse and confirmed it was a male fetus. When I returned to the Marquis's manor, Elena and the people she had bribed to testify had already been captured in one fell swoop by Lady Sylvia. If the family does not cause chaos itself, how can outsiders interfere? Did you not consider that if the Marquis's enemies knew about this and used it as an excuse to report to the throne, even the Marquis's title could be revoked by the Emperor? Lady Sylvia sat in the high seat, her face stern. Elena looked as if she had just woken up from a dream, crying silently, only able to mumble admissions of guilt. Lord Wei was so angry he vomited blood and was unconscious for half a day before waking up. As soon as he opened his eyes, what struck his sight was a bearded William kneeling by the bed, holding a tiny red infant in his arms. It is a boy. Standing outside the door hearing the father and son crying loudly together, I knew the Marquis's title was already an item in my family's bag. Tina was indeed useful. Even if she had given birth to something else, I would have found a way to turn it into a boy or dragon, phoenix twins. But since it was the true bloodline of the Marquis's manor, it saved so much trouble. On the way to pick up Tina and bring her back to the manor with William, he asked me with a cold face, "Exactly from which step did you calculate this?" I was very surprised. Calculate? Who did I calculate against? Wasn't I just countering whatever move came my way? William suddenly turned his head. What about me? You married me, calculating gains and losses from beginning to end. Did you ever have even a little bit of affection for me? I really couldn't understand what he was saying, so I could only patiently comfort him. Isn't it better this way? If I were someone who lived and died for love, being left behind by you on our wedding night, I would have been heartbroken to the point of dying and coming back to life. Then I would have spent my own money to support the whole family for months, only to wait for you to return bringing a woman saying you wanted to take a concubine. I would surely have been disappointed to the extreme. Fighting to the death with Tina, or hanging myself in sorrow. How could there be such a happy scene as today? I initially intended to add the sentence, "What else are you dissatisfied with?" But seeing William holding his head in misery, rarely did I gently swallow those words. The House of Qiao Brand, not unexpectedly, was selected as one of the 9 great royal merchants. Master Qiao was also granted the title of honorary vice-director of the 5th rank and simultaneously assumed the role of managing the weaving bureau in Jiangning, becoming one of the first merchants in the dynasty to be granted an official position. When the good news arrived, the happiest person was Lady Sylvia. The old princess had eyes as bright as torches, having invested early in the House of Qiao Brand. At the family banquet, Master Qiao winked and lowered his voice to boast to me. Originally, today was just the coming-of-age ceremony for my younger sister, Bianca Qiao. However, Uncle Qiao, my aunt, and a crowd of cousins dragged themselves along, forcefully turning it into a banquet for the whole family. The world is bustling and noisy, ultimately only for profit. I had seen through this long ago. According to custom, grandmother was the only female relative allowed to sit at the main table. Bianca and I both had to give up our seats to the male cousins. But when Bianca was about to stand up, I placed my hand on hers to keep her seated. Today you are the main character. A merchant family also has its advantages: fewer rituals, less formality. Whoever earns the money has the right to speak. Uncle Qiao had sharp eyes. He immediately laughed fakely. Bianca doesn't need to stand, just listen to Bella. Ah no, the little Marquis's wife. I immediately corrected him. Uncle Qiao, please watch your words. My husband is not the Marquis yet. Lord Wei is still breathing. Uncle Qiao's smile stiffened, looking as if he wanted to slap himself, then quickly sat in the seat furthest from me. Lord Wei was indeed still breathing, but Lady Sylvia had ruthlessly separated the household. Each person in the households of William's eldest and second brothers was given a sum of silver, and those 2 families moved out to live separately last month. Tina was also officially taken as a concubine. The child she gave birth to, according to Lord Wei's wishes, was recorded under my name, becoming William's legitimate eldest son. I had no objections for a woman. Giving birth is walking a lap around the gates of hell. I did not want to take the risk. Tina also had no objections. I can't even write my own name properly. How can I teach a child? Only by following you, sister, will he have a future. As for William, I forgot to ask, but I guessed he wouldn't have an opinion either. The borderlands erupted in flames of war again. William, not sure where he heard the phrase, "I do not raise waste," once again asked to go to battle, eloquently swearing to achieve illustrious military exploits to make me look at him with different eyes. I immediately prepared ample luggage and clothes for William. Since he was the heir to the title, he should be loyal to the country and bring glory to the family. If he could help me exchange it for a decree of nobility, that would be even better. Tina looked uneasy, afraid that he would bring back another unworthy woman. I waved my hand. When he was invited by colleagues to a brothel to listen to singing, he was as obedient as a cat, looking like someone who, having been bitten by a snake once, fears a rope for 10 years. Tina pursed her lips. I don't care what he thinks. I'm only afraid that if there is a new person, you won't be happy to teach me anymore, sister. Right. I have handed over part of the housekeeping authority to Tina, because I still have to worry about half of the House of Qiao's assets. I really can't handle it all. She was indeed smart and learned very quickly, managing the farms and villas outside perfectly. Her whole person looked much more spirited. If she met any men who wanted to take advantage, she scolded them until they couldn't lift their heads. Uncle Qiao, hearing my mother and me chatting about interesting things in the Marquis's manor, had eyes shining brightly. Is it that busy? Why don't I give my youngest son to you to adopt? It would help shoulder the business and help your husband have an heir. Before my father could speak, my sister stood up and filled Uncle Qiao's cup with wine. No need for Uncle to worry. I have calculated carefully. In the future, I will recruit a husband to marry into our family, naturally sharing the burden with father and sister. I looked at Uncle Qiao drinking wine in frustration and felt a pang of pity, so I gently tugged at my father's sleeve. Lady Sylvia recently mentioned father. She wants to ask you to help choose another husband for her. Status and assets are not important. She just needs a tough fate. My father followed my gaze and saw Uncle Qiao, who had divorced for the 5th time, and slowly fell into deep thought. Seeing me to the door, Mother's eyes were red again. Bella, you couldn't marry the person you truly love. Do you really have no resentment in your heart? I stood next to the spacious and luxurious carriage, looking at my sister blinking curiously beside me, and thought seriously for a moment. The paths on which we women can gamble are truly few. Emotions change in the blink of an eye. I dare not bet my whole life on such a thing. Moreover, I smiled softly. After marrying William, everything went according to my wishes. So, isn't that also a predetermined good match between him and me? True empowerment does not always stem from romantic fulfillment but from the mastery of one's own destiny. Bella teaches us that while emotions are fleeting, competence, resilience, and pragmatism are the enduring foundations of a secure life. Instead of succumbing to jealousy or relying on others for validation, she treated her challenges as opportunities, turning a loveless marriage into a thriving partnership. Her journey reveals a profound truth: a woman's greatest dowry is not her wealth, but her sharp mind and unshakable independence. Happiness is not given, it is strategically built by those who refuse to be victims. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.